Stories of the Nazgûl, Number 7, Gan Altan the Honoured. Gan Altan was a mighty warrior from the scrublands of Khand. His battle prowess was known throughout the eastern lands, and he served any lord, chief, peasant, or merchant who could pay in coin. When Sauron's emissaries spread throughout the east and south, calling all the warriors to arms in wars in the west, Gan Altan and his mercenaries were the first to take up the call. The Elves of Hollin were quick to realize the strength of this strange and outlandish man. For be it on foot or horse, Gan Altan was a force to be feared. His sword drank deep of the blood of his enemies, and he was ever in the van of Sauron's armies. All those of Eriador came to fear his blade, the widow's wail. In Khand, fear and terror are often greater weapons than steel or iron, and Gan Altan had holes bored into the steel of his blade so that it gave a high-pitched wail as it was swung. It was said it was the cry of the countless widows it had created. Gan Altan's dread aura was enhanced by the trophy-like necklace he wore, adorned with the ears of his enemies. Elf ears made for a particularly exotic arrangement, and Gan Altan gathered all that he could. Gan Altan's warrior fame peaked at the Battle of the Fords of the Glandwin, in the early days of the War of Sauron and the Elves. His sword sang as it sliced its foes, and Gan Altan laughed as the thrill of battle overcame him. The Elves began to fall back against the brutal attack and powerful charges of the Khandish cavalry. They hoped to flee to the safety of their nearby stronghold of Ostineth-Il. A few brave souls stayed in the rear guard to buy the retreating forces more time, and chief among them was Eruantian. It was rumoured that Eruantian was descended from the House of Feanor, and there were few among the Noldor who could match his skill with the blade. Gan Altan and his guard were the first to start crossing the fords to follow the retreating elves, and in the midst of the river he and Eruantian met. The river, now running red with blood, crashed into the immovable feet of the two warriors. "I am Eruantian of the Noldor," he said, "and captain to the forces of Lord Celebrimbor. You may slay me this day, but know this, your victories will be short-lived. The goodly peoples of a man will rise and fight against the encroaching darkness." "Let them try," Gan Altan replied with a great bellowing laugh. "My sword stands ready to send all to your deaths, be you elf or man or dwarf. Greater deeds must be done this day, so let us not tarry, elf." He charged at Eruantian, and his men followed with a mighty war cry. The few guarding elves fought valiantly, but their valour would not win the day. In Eruantian, Gan Altan had finally met a worthy match, and the elf almost had the better of him. Their blades sang as they clashed, and the keening of Widow's wail was piercing to their ears. Eruantian, however, could not match the raw savagery of this warrior from the east, and he was undone when Gan Altan allowed the elf's sword to tear through his arm in order to gain an opening. With one final, terrible blow, he cut the head from the elf's shoulders. It is said that the cry of Widow's wail had never sang louder than in that stroke. Gan Altan took the ears of Eruantian and placed them with pride in the very middle of his macabre necklace. As dawn broke the next day, the sky was a deep red from the blood spilled at the fords. But Gan Altan had secured the crossing into Eregion and had paved the way for Sauron's full invasion. Gan Altan and his men laughed and feasted in the early morning sun, but as the sun rose high into the sky, a great dark cloud swept swiftly in from the east and cast all the lands into darkness. The orc hordes had come. They streamed past Gan Altan's camp in perfect step, and the ground shook at the weight of thousands of heavy feet stamping in unison. At length, the main body of the orc horde passed over the ford and took to camp. Gan Altan ordered his men be ready to break camp, but at that moment a great fanfare of trumpets and high banners crested the hill behind Gan Altan's small camp. The sky seemed to darken, and time slowed to a crawl as the tall, dark figure of the Lord of Shadow appeared atop the hill. Sauron walked slowly, but gracefully, and came to Gan Altan. He met the Khandish warrior alone and spoke to him. "Your legends cannot compare to your deeds, mighty warlord. With your victory you have handed to me Eregion, and with that the gateway to Eriador. Let it not be said that I do not acknowledge service and skill. I bid you to take this ring, and with it you will become even mightier in arm and mind. Take it as an honour from me, Sauron, the Lord of Middle-earth, and clear this land of these accursed elves." It was all Gan Altan could do in that moment, to reach out, take the ring, and give a deep bow. He slid the simple band of gold onto his finger, and immediately felt a power as he had never before. In the war that followed, Gan Altan and his riders swept the southern reaches of Eriador like a bloody tide, spreading fear and terror before them. As Sauron had said, Gan Altan became stronger and stronger each day, and found himself winning battles with fewer and fewer casualties. He fell countless great warriors, often in a single blow, and laid out battle plans that the greatest captains of the elves could not predict. With this strength came brutality, and he was merciless to his foes, slaughtering all those before him with abandon, as Widow's Wail sang its sorrowful song. Sauron's victory proved to be short-lived in Eriador, and as the armies of Mordor came upon the lands of Lindon, the Númenóreans landed at Mithlond. Gan Altan was not present in the first great battle after their coming, but in hearing the stories of the battle, he knew that the tide had turned. The orcs had been slaughtered to a man, and Gan Altan wanted more than a futile death here, far from home, and he and his warriors left for Khand. Sauron was utterly defeated in Eriador, and he himself vanished. His orc hordes were slain or routed, and even Mordor lay abandoned. Gan Altan returned to the scrublands and deserts of his home, and he felt weak. He sat in his tent in contemplation. He craved battle, he craved war, he craved blood. "We were weak," he declared to his people. "That is why the men from the sea defeated us so soundly. We were weak. We must become stronger if we would have our revenge upon them. Ride with me and know battle. Become one with battle. Only then can we go back to Eregion and stain its hills and trees and rivers with blood." And so his warband rode forth, and fought against their own. Gan Altan led a bloody campaign against the other Khandish lords, to sate his bloodlust, killing and pillaging and desecrating with fury. He didn't want to unite the clans, he wanted to temper them in battle, show them the power of a true warrior, one honoured by Sauron himself. He wanted to weed weakness out of them, and build an army of invincible warriors. But his violence did not go unanswered, and the warlords of Khand did unite against him, to stop his wanton destruction and slaughter. Gan Altan was a mighty warrior, and nigh on unbeatable, but his warband was not. The great battle that followed was short. Gan Altan's warband was outnumbered 30 to 1, and despite their resolve and ferocity they were easily slain or broken. Gan cursed them for their cowardice and folly, and he fought on alone. Try as they might, the warriors of Khand could not beat this man. They fought on and on, always gaining ground, but paying for each step gained. In time, however, even the mighty Gan Altan could not fight any longer, as weariness finally took him. Unwilling to die at the hands of these traitors, he fled into the dead lands of Mordor. Never again would Gan Altan the Honoured come out of the Black Land, at least not as the man he once was. As he wandered alone in the bleak wasteland, cursing his comrades and cursing life itself for delivering him to this desolate place, he stumbled across a familiar face coming in from the west. It was Sauron. He could tell from the feeling inside him and the darkening of the sky, but this was not the Sauron who stood proud and tall in the hill in Eregion. This was a spiteful and hateful being in tatty robes. He appeared as an old man, bent from age and weariness and walking with a simple wooden stick. Gan Altan could do no more than stare at this image of Sauron and wonder. After what may have been days, Gan gave a knowing nod to Sauron and just fell in behind him. The two then made their way east, not to be seen or heard for many years. It was said thereafter, in Khandish folklore, that if you listened hard enough when the wind blew in from the west, you could hear the widow's wail crying out to the darkened skies. This story was written by Araner of Arnor. It is not a canonical story, but was written to give a backstory to the Nazgûl in Divide and Conquer. We have not written stories for Khamûl the Easterling or the Witch King of Angmar, and this concludes the series. I hope you have enjoyed, and thank you.